New rules for your tires. Regulators promise savings, but some manufacturers warn it will cost more. We take those concerns to the state energy leader. The full picture of California's money, chronically late.
When I first started as state auditor in 2023, we were late as a state by almost a year.
What's the consequence of having these late financial statements, this late financial reporting?
It's primarily an accountability problem.
Investing your taxpayer dollars.
I have a background in business and in housing specifically. Being the next state treasurer feels to me like the perfect fit.
How Eleni Kounalakis says she would make an impact if elected state treasurer. A pathway to home ownership, the new loan program California voters are deciding on in November.
Thank you for joining us for California Politics 360. I'm Ashley Zavala. Tension over tires. California regulators this week set new rules dictating what kind of tires you can buy when you get them replaced. I was the only reporter in the hearing room when it happened, so our coverage of this has gotten millions of views from across the country. The Energy Commission unanimously passed the rule that pushes tire makers and sellers to provide more energy-efficient tires in California. State regulators say this is meant to save money for consumers on gas or electricity if you have an EV. But some tire makers say this will add to the cost of living in this state. At the center of this is the tire's rolling resistance, or how much energy a tire uses as it rolls down the road. Lower resistance means a vehicle uses less gas or electricity. New cars generally come with efficient tires, but consumers typically replace them with tires that have a higher rolling resistance. This new rule comes in phases. So first, by 2029, California will only allow the sale of tires with a maximum rolling resistance level of 9.1. In phase 2, the standard lowers to 7.2 starting in 2033. Goodyear is the largest tire manufacturer in the United States. The company estimates by 2033, about 70% of tires currently sold in California would be banned.
From the commission or the industry perspective, what we're really concerned about is the fact that these costs to the average, families in California that are, struggling with affordability, is that it's going to increase their costs by hundreds of dollars in phase 2.
There's been a lot of questions about why now, costs, and the impact on safety and longevity of tires. I sat down with the chair of the California Energy Commission, David Hochschild. Here's part of our conversation. So first, I just want to ask, if a California driver walks into a tire shop in 2029, what can they expect?
High efficiency tires. That is the good news. What we're doing on Monday, we voted unanimously to require that the state have high efficiency tires. So essentially what happens today when you go to buy a new vehicle, those come standard with high efficiency tires. That is not true when you go to get replacement tires. And in fact, the average loss is 10 to 20% of your range when you buy replacement tires. So what this standard will do is ensure the same high quality, high efficiency tires we get on new vehicles, those protections for consumers are extended to replacement tires as well.
So the tire industry right now is saying that roughly 70% of the tires currently sold in California could ultimately be eliminated by stricter standards. Is that number wrong?
Well, first of all, that's not actually true that the whole tire industry is saying that. In fact, the standard was strongly supported by the two biggest tire manufacturers in the world, Michelin and Bridgestone, and others like Enzo, as well as the largest tire retailer in the state of California, which is Discount Tires. So what happens when you set a standard like this is that the industry, reaches out and does new tires that meet the standard. And we've seen this happen again and again with other industries. A few years ago, we did the lighting standard, which moved the state to high efficiency LEDs. That's saving $7 billion a year. And all the lighting manufacturers have complied. So that will happen as well here. And the good thing about how we've structured this is there's ample time to do that. So phase 1, which is a lighter standard, goes into effect in 2029. Phase 2 doesn't go into effect until 2033. So that's 6.5 years out. So plenty of time for tire manufacturers today to sell out their existing inventories and to work to meet the new standard.
So then if it's not 70%, what's your number? What is it?
Oh, 70% of the tires in the replacement market, yeah, those will turn over, okay? What was not accurate is that most of the tire industry is in a pole. We have the majority of the market in California is just served by 3 manufacturers. That's Michelin, Bridgestone, and Goodyear, and the first 2 of those are in support of the standard. So the question of like what will be available for Californians when the standard hits, there will be plenty of high efficiency tires, but that is part of the innovation cycle. The manufacturers step up and meet the standard. And we know it's possible because they're already doing that for all the tires on new vehicles today. So that's why I say it's not a radical step.
Okay, but so, I mean, why not just let consumers decide for themselves if they want these higher efficiency tires?
Well, look, we're in a period where there's incredible duress on working families in California. We're in an affordability crisis. The Iran war, of course, has made that even worse. We had 140 ships a day going through the Strait of Hormuz. Now it's down to 3. Gas prices are higher around our state and our nation and our world. And so protecting consumers is at the top of our list. And that is why the standard was strong. It's supported by all the consumer groups, Consumer Reports, Consumer Federation of California, Consumer Federation of America. We estimate the standard will save about $1 billion a year for Californians. And that works out to about $150 for a set of tires over the life of the tires. And so really it is a standard that is intended to protect consumers, and it's in keeping with, a long set of other efficiency standards that we've done. So when you buy a television, that is subject to an energy efficiency standard. That cut the energy use of TVs in half. When you buy a computer, when you buy a washing machine, a dishwasher, a refrigerator, and even your light bulbs, we set those basic standards so that consumers are not stuck paying higher bills over the life cycle of the product.
This conversation continues online. I asked Chair Hochschild about the cost concerns and how enforcement will work to ensure that tires are safe. Well, California's financial reports are chronically late. The issues raised in a recently released state audit. For years, California's government has been chronically late in reporting its finances, providing the full picture of the state's financial health. So much so, back in 2020, the state auditor's office classified the state controller and various other state departments as high risk. That high risk list is one of several ways the state auditor's office is trying to tackle waste, fraud, and abuse in California. I sat down with State Auditor Grant Parks for his first TV interview since taking office. Here's part of our conversation. For the general, everyday taxpayer voter, what is the issue? What's the consequence of having these late financial statements, this late financial reporting?
It's primarily an accountability problem, but also, it might be difficult for the state, for example, to sell bonds, to issue bonds. If you don't have timely financial statements that people who may want to purchase those bonds to understand how the state is doing financially. Another key reason why the state's financial statements are so important is it's a part of the statewide single audit. The state's financial statements are combined with other audits of federal programs that go to the federal government. The federal government's not going to want to give us money if we're not auditing their federal programs and sharing with them how we're spending their federal dollars. And so getting that information timely to the federal government is critically important.
Aside from the late financial reporting situation, your high risk assessment that comes out annually, that also flagged, the state's use of COVID-19 money, CalFresh. Just generally from that high risk area, have there been improvements since you issued that in December?
So we do the assessment. I don't really know if things have improved until we actually do the audit. So it's assessment first, it gets on the high risk list, and once it's on the high risk list, to the extent I have the audit resources to work on it, then I can do an audit and dig deeper and find out where we are. So what we saw in last December when we issued the high risk list was really us itemizing what we see right now as risky, but in terms of coming up with tangible solutions to fix those issues, that's where the audit comes in. And so getting on the high-risk list is really part one of a two-part process.
Okay, so then the next update would be when exactly?
So we do our updates of the high-risk list every 2 years. But once items are on the high-risk list, And to the extent I have the resources, I can self-initiate audits whenever I like to figure out what's going on. So KPMG did this audit of the financial statements that was on our high-risk list. We currently have a high-risk audit in progress on the state's water infrastructure. And what that means in terms of maintaining that infrastructure, what it means to the risk of residents that may live downstream of some of these dams, for example. We all remember what happened or almost happened with Lake Oroville. We have higher risk audit underway right now on the Medi-Cal program, which is also on our high risk list, and so that will be issued later this year. And so work is happening in our office beyond just classifying things as high risk, but actually doing audits to try and figure out how do we improve some of these programs.
State Auditor Grant Parks and I also talk about the recommendations laid out in the audit to improve other agency communication and roles. This is a lengthy conversation that you can find online. Well, responsible for investing your tax dollars, why Treasurer candidate Eleni Kounalakis wants the job. Ahead of the general election in November, I'm sitting down with the candidates running for major statewide offices. This week, we're focused on state treasurer. They are California's banker, investor, and lead manager of the state's assets. They invest all of your taxpayer dollars and manage the state's cash flow and sell state bonds. This November, California will elect a new state treasurer. Democrat and Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis and Republican Jennifer Hawks are running for the office. This week, I sat down with Eleni Kounalakis, who explains how she would make an impact if elected. Sitting down with Eleni Kounalakis.
Frankly, I enjoy public service. It feels very meaningful to me.
California's Democratic Lieutenant Governor, former U.S. ambassador, and real estate developer says she's got the background to be the state's next banker.
And because I have a background in business and in housing specifically, being the next state treasurer feels to me like the perfect fit. And I'm very, very excited to take on this new role.
With your background in real estate, with your father's reputation in real estate, he's a well-known Democratic donor. And with you handling these investments, this financing in housing and infrastructure, what will you do to ensure there's no perception of a conflict or issue there?
You know, Ashley, I was surprised a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, Cal Matters did a report that said that of the 8 constitutional officers in California, I was the only one who did not have an FPPC violation. I am very particular about the details, and it's very important to me to make sure that there are no conflicts, that everything is operated transparently and above board.
Kounalakis told me she sees the state's financial situation as volatile, relying on the stock market to do well so that the state's finances do well. She supports a proposal that would push state lawmakers to save more money. She also said she thinks the state should invest more in higher education.
I will give you one thing that I do want to focus on day one. The California bond rating right now is the highest it's been since the Great Recession. Both Governor Newsom and Fiona Ma and the Governor's Department of Finance, all of them deserve a lot of credit for getting the bond rating back up. But in fact, it could be higher.
You initially, in this election, ran for governor, and then you decided to not do that, and then shortly after you decided to run for state treasurer. Why?
I'm not a career politician. Again, this is the first election that I had, was to serve as lieutenant governor, and I cannot tell you what an honor and a privilege it has been. Running for governor of California, I think, as you saw very intimately, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. We're a huge state. 40 million people, an economy the size of India's, and getting your message out is just a very difficult thing to do. And so I was in it. I was certainly interested in the job. But after a while, I thought, we need a treasurer who has a deep background and experience in business and finance and public finance. I know that I can serve the people of our state very well in this position, so it just felt like a much better fit for me. But I will say never, and I still have possible things I can do in the future. But for right now, this to me is by far the best way that I can use my skills and my experience to serve the people.
But for those who saw that you ran for that higher office, then you switched to another, for those who might think that maybe you don't really actually want to be state treasurer, you just want to hold another office, what would you say to that?
No, it's because I want this office that I switched. It's as simple as that.
My full conversation with candidate for state treasurer Eleni Kounalakis is available right now on calpolitics360.com. Also, this November, voters will decide whether the state can borrow billions to help people buy homes. Why supporters say this could help first-time home buyers, while critics question the impact on affordability. In a state like California, with high real estate prices, one of the major obstacles for people to buy a home is coming up with a down payment. Proposition 37 is designed to help with that, setting up a $25 billion loan program to help people become homeowners. Edie Lambert explains who would be eligible and how this would work.
If you wanted to buy this brand new 3-bedroom, 3-bath home in Sacramento's Natomas neighborhood, for a traditional 20% down payment, you'd need to come up with $118,000 up front. Most people don't have that kind of money saved up. And the backers of Prop 37 say that's how renters are getting left behind.
Homeownership is the biggest thing to create generational wealth, not a question. Instead of paying rent for 10 years, you have a house, it increases value, you're paying down the mortgage. It creates real equity and real value and real generational wealth for people.
Former State Senate Majority Leader and Assembly Speaker Bob Hertzberg wrote Prop 37. It would specifically allow the state's government to issue $25 billion in bonds to offer home loans. People could use that money to borrow up to 17% of their down payment. They would have to come up with at least 3%, and their primary mortgage would cover the other 80%. In practical terms, here's a look at what you'd have to save for a down payment if you could borrow the rest through Prop 37 bonds. Looking at some counties across the state, you could buy an average house after saving between $16,000 and $42,000 for your down payment.
The legislative analyst, which is the one that analyzes costs, says actually on the ballot, no cost to state or local taxpayers, because it's all privately funded. We're asking private investors to put the money up to help you with a down payment. So it's not taxpayer dollars, and there's no taxpayer risk. How great is that?
Other parts of Prop 37 cover who qualifies and what type of house you can buy. It's for people who have lived in the state for more than a year, plan to live in the home, and fall under 200% of the area median income. Again, to give you some real numbers, here are those same counties. For a family of 4, that income cap ranges from $203,000 a year in Los Angeles County to $342,000 in San Francisco County. These loans could only be used to buy new homes from builders who agree to a set of standards. Proponents say this tackles a second issue, creating more middle-class housing in California. There's no formal opposition filed with the Secretary of State, but Assemblyman Carl DeMaio is against Prop 37, starting with loans he believes some people won't be able to afford.
They want to repeat the bad practices that led to the last housing collapse. The way we get affordable housing is we got to cut the red tape on housing construction in California, and nothing in Prop 37, not a single sentence makes it more affordable to build housing in California. Actually, quite the opposite. It contains a variety of mandates to drive the price of construction up on these housing projects.
There are other programs to help Californians with down payments, but those are only for first-time homeowners. In those loans, they do not have to be paid off at the same time as the main mortgage. But when homes like this increase in value, the state gets part of that profit when the home is sold. Under Prop 37, the homeowner keeps that money. For California Politics 360, I'm Edie Lambert.
Right now on calpolitics360.com, you can watch this week's full interviews. We also want to hear from you. What issues do you want us to cover on this program? Send us an email at contact@calpolitics360.com. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's California Politics 360. See you next week.